Thank you, Mr. Speaker. To ask the Secretary of State for Justice if he will make a statement on the early release of rapists and child groomers.
Minister.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Those who perpetrate these heinous crimes must face the full force of the law. Under this government, convictions for child sex offences are a record high. At the end of Parliament, more criminals will be behind bars than ever before. But this government, Mr. Speaker, inherited a prison system on the brink of collapse, with at one point fewer than 100 places left in the whole estate. Without the Sentencing Act, which received royal assent in January of this year, the courts would be at risk of grinding to a halt, preventing sex offenders and others from being brought to justice. No space in prisons would mean no trials, no justice for victims, no punishment for offenders. That is the choice. Strict licence conditions in the community for those who have already served time in prison under our reforms, or the collapse of the system entirely, leaving sex offenders and others acting with impunity. The previous government added just 500 prison places to the system in 14 years, in stark contrast to this government, which is delivering the largest prison expansion since the Victorian era. In under 2 years, this government has delivered 3,100 additional places, and we are on track to deliver almost 11,000 more by 2031. Under our reforms, dangerous offenders will continue to be locked up for a long time. Over 18,000 offenders serving life or extended sentences will not be affected by changes to release points and will remain subject to parole board decisions. Offenders who are released will face strict licence conditions, closer probation supervision for the most dangerous offenders, exclusion zones, tagging, 24/7 tracking and curfews. This is the biggest expansion, Mr. Speaker, of tagging in history, ensuring dangerous offenders are monitored and the public protected. And if risk in the community becomes unmanageable, those offenders can be recalled to prison. Mr. Speaker, the previous government left prisons on the verge of collapse. This government is safely delivering reforms needed to end the cycle of capacity crises and protect the British public.
Dr. Kieran Mull.
Imagine you are the victim of a serious crime, as serious as rape or child grooming, and you receive a letter telling you that the perpetrator who harmed you is going to be let out of prison early. Appallingly, this is the experience right now for thousands of victims of crime, including some of the most serious crimes imaginable, thanks to the changes that have been made to our sentencing laws by this Labour government, helped by the Liberal Democrats. Before the Minister and Labour MPs, as he did, tells us as a result of prison overcrowding, I want every member of this House to be crystal clear about the actual choice this government is making. The last Labour government released 80,000 prisoners early. The last Conservative government also operated early release programmes, as this government has. That's not new, but these schemes excluded serious sexual offenders. Do Labour MPs really want to tell their constituents they support the early release of rapists and child groomers when there are other existing schemes that could be used to avoid that? I want to pay tribute to grooming gangs campaigner Fiona Goddard, who, like many others, refused to be silent when she received her letter. Fiona's abusers were sentenced to between 16 and 20 years in prison in 2019. Now she says the justice she got in that courtroom is being snatched away from her, and she's right. What did the Labour government say to the journalist raising her case? That the most serious offences would be excluded. Labour told a victim of rape, sexual assault and grooming that her offenders weren't serious enough to be excluded from early release. Disgraceful. And here we are, just a matter of weeks away from these serious offenders coming out, and we still don't know how many are being released and what crimes they've committed. So thank you very much, Mr. Speaker, for granting this urgent question. This government cannot cover up what it's doing to victims any longer. They must tell us now, today, how many criminals, how many rapists and child groomers are going to be released early, when they're going to be released, and exactly what crimes they've committed. I'm confident when the public understand what is being done in their names, there'll be an outcry. And our new incoming Prime Minister will have a choice: to act in the interest of rapists and paedophiles, or to stand up for victims. What's it going to be?
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I've listened to the Honourable Member on this issue a lot, and I must once again remind him of his record in government and why the Sentencing Act was an absolute necessity to keep the criminal justice system functioning. Prisons, when we came to office, were at bursting point. 500 prison places added in 14 years. 10,000 offenders released by the last government, largely in secret. And that's the key point, Mr. Speaker, because he's asked quite rightly and understandably questions about how the scheme is going to be delivered, how victims are going to be kept informed. Under the Conservatives, it was pure chaos. They lost the grip of the system. They didn't have a long-term plan for stability in the prison estate. And that meant when they did have to operate early release mechanisms, they gave the victims just a few days' notice, if that at all. Complete secrecy, complete chaos, and we will not let that happen to the British public again. There is a choice. There is no alternative that has been offered by the opposition to the prison crisis that they created. There is a choice. Strict...
Can I just help? But we don't need to worry about what their position is. The question is to yourself and about what you're going to do. As I've also got a constituent that got a letter. So I've got to say it's very serious across the country. Minister.
Mr. Speaker, let me be very clear. The Sentencing Act, which received royal assent in January, sets out some provisions which are coming into effect in September. We are determined to ensure that victims will receive due notification in good time, not just because we believe there is a responsibility of government to let them know, but because we know that victims need to have a role to play in the licence conditions that we set. It's absolutely vital that victims' voices are heard. That's why we've already begun communication with victims groups and indeed victims who are party to the victim contact scheme. And we will go further and make sure that all those that are party to the scheme receive precise information on their case. Not just because we want to let them know, Mr. Speaker, but because we want to hear from them to ensure that when we put in the most robust licence conditions in the community, victims' voices are at the heart of the decisions we make. That's absolutely right, and that's not what happened under the Conservative government.
Jess Phillips.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I recognise actually that so few rapists went to prison under the previous administration and the increase has been huge actually, especially with child rapists, and I congratulate the government from that. It is my opinion, however, that there should be more exemptions within the release scheme, and child rapists seems to be an area that we should potentially all be looking to work together for, if the numbers allow, because we cannot let the prison system end. What I would like to ask, though, is that really specifically the risk assessments that will be done on these cases before release, because I have to say my experience of risk assessment in these cases is not great, does not take account of the victim, does not take account of public safety more broadly. So can we have some assurances that there has been a change to the regime from the previous administration of risk assessments that will be done on release of any prisoner to make sure that we are actually safe in public?
Well, let me first, Mr. Speaker, if I may, pay tribute to my honourable friend for the work she did both in government and indeed in opposition on these issues. She's absolutely right. She's raised with me outside of the chamber the issue of pre-sentencing reports, in particular in relation to domestic abuse. And as she knows, I've spoken with Lord Timpson, and we will be coming back to her on those specific measures. She is also right to raise this issue of community safety, and that is why we've invested £700 million into the probation system, the biggest investment in probation for a generation. It's why we've recruited more probation officers than ever before, and it's why, for the first time, in several decades, in fact, that caseloads for your average probation officer is going down rather than going record highs under the Conservatives.